Hello, my name is Alex Didier, and today I'm giving a presentation called Hierarchy, the Western Dilemma. So, what is the Western Dilemma? What is hierarchy? Well, let's talk about what hierarchy is in a theoretical or philosophical sense. Hierarchy is items, in any sense, being ranked amongst each other, one thing being of greater importance than the other. And in itself, it's a concept that can be applied to various things. And when it comes to musical hierarchy, we could look at things like Schenkerian analysis as kind of, what has been the tool that people use to learn how to distinguish, motions to inner voices, outer lenses, backgrounds, foregrounds. It's pretty standard that Schenker himself is credited or has been credited to, kind of paving the way for these theories. What many of us don't think about, before Schenker, there was music that existed with hierarchy and structure. Through the music of Indian music, I've researched for this topic, and more specifically South Indian Carnatic music, along with Balinese gamelan, we can see different levels of hierarchy playing a part that wouldn't necessarily follow the rules of Schenkerian analysis, but do demonstrate hierarchy and even melodic linear hierarchy. So in itself, it's not a bad thing. What the Western dilemma is now facing is Heinrich Schenker and his racism. This is something that we really should not pretend didn't happen, should not overlook, should not whitewash, if you will. But the dilemma is, well, what do we do? It's a system that's been used, and a system that has value, at least in some people's opinions, for the understanding of music composition and theory and a variety of applications. So, linear versus harmonic prolongation, are they equally important? I would say it's impossible to say yes or no in general. I would say if you're writing music and you have a heightened sense on harmony, then harmonic prolongation will be of more importance. If you're writing melodic lines without, a dedicated harmony, a movable harmony, then your linear prolongation will be of importance. Ultimately, I think they're hand in hand with what goes into understanding the capabilities of music. So, in a response to Philip Ewell's ideas about presenting a new type of, graduate level theory, less based around Schenker and more about harmonic prolongation, I think that's valid. I think that's something that we should look into and teach. I happen to think that form classes on form does a great job teaching harmonic prolongation along in Kaplan's theories. However, though, you do lose out on a bit of the linear aspect of it that learning counterpoint and understand melodically through. So I would say that you can't you could, but I don't know if we should throw out the linear aspect of what has been Schenkerian analysis. So let's talk about Schenker and the God complex. I would say that Schenker's biggest downfall is he saw himself as, God, essentially. He was Jewish, before he believed in God. But it kind of seems like he struggled to view himself as less than God. So, in a hierarchical sense, I think that makes a bit of sense in my own understanding why he was so, quick to put himself in this, Erlinier category of genius, and also, designed a system to perpetuate these other geniuses, Bach, Mozart, Beethoven. These geniuses that he was seeking to prove, they didn't earn these abilities. They were given by something somehow. I mean, people just fall into life kind of doing what they do. And, his theory seeks to highlight some sort of importance over what you were, given on day one. I mean, you develop these tools as your, life continues onward. But essentially, I mean, Mozart was writing things that Schenker would call genius at 10 years old, and some people never even want to write melodies like that. So I would say that Schenker did create a tool that can be used for various things. And then within maybe even the first few seconds of his, idea, he started mixing in his racial views. He tainted his creation. So what can we say? Can we say that these things can be separate? If you look through Schenker's own lens of, believing in a God, God would be encompassing all of his creation. So in that sense, no. And not that I'm viewing Schenker as the same kind of sense, but no, I don't think we can truly separate his racial views and remove it completely from his theories. I think it's important to note that yes, these lines he drew, he saw as, dedicated elevation for himself. So the background of hierarchy, what is it that he failed at? What is it that he tainted this possible, tool with? Well, I think he mixed up what I would call necessary and contingency. Now, this is mixing in a bit of philosophy and kind of viewing through the lens of where his own logic failed. Schenker believed in a God. Now, in order to believe in God, which he did, you have to be able to believe in what we would call necessary beings. This is a item or a thing that was able to exist without being created. No need for any motion into gear. It's always been. Now, everything else would be what you would call contingent. This is something that relies on something previous for its creation. It needs a starting point. So, if we think about the Schenkerian model, the background itself is something that starts with what we would call the head tone. That right there is contingent. Now, where did the head tone come from? Where did the background originate from? What necessary being created that? Well, I guess in this case, Schenker was trying to prove that the composers themselves were the necessary beings, in a sense of their creation, elevating them to godlike status, being the background, and everything else weaving through little branches of never-ending foregrounds. So let's take a look at a graph of what I think could have been a better way for him, using his own logic, to view his outlook on life. Or perhaps he did, but I found this an interesting comparison. On the top, we see a standard pedagogical day one background frame, the Linie. In C major, this would be a descending line of 3, starting on E, underlining a tonic chord, moving to scale degree 2 on a dominant, and ending on tonic, C. So this open note heads here demonstrates the background most level of the piece. And he saw himself and others in this genius category as being equivalent to this background. But I think what he did not take into consideration is, well, he's not. In his own theory, was twisted because he was trying to elevate himself to a level of something that he wasn't. He was insecure about something. He was a Jewish man, and in response to Wagner's anti-Semitic views, he took a stance as being more German than Wagner himself, being that he was the true German. All these hoops that these people have to jump through to elevate themselves. So I have an interesting take on it here. He failed because he didn't use the ultimate background, which I've demonstrated here, as an infinite necessary pedal, which in this case never descends and is always 3. This instance here of necessary line is the starting point for any of these backgrounds. Your head tone here essentially comes from this necessary line, and a whole piece stops at a certain point. But in this case, it never really stops. This sense of everything musically, or in his view, life, is in parentheses, inserted or embedded within this never-ending, never even starting point type of necessary pedal. In this case, the end pedal, according to Schenker, should have been God, but he saw himself and these geniuses as godlike. Therefore, he had a God complex, and that was his biggest downfall. So, what do we take from this? This is a topic that must be discussed. There's been a lot of recent drama and topics that are argued, and Philip Ewell's point that's been very moving this year has to be looked at. And what do we make out of a concept that was designed for like good and bad? I mean, his views of the world were twisted, but the way he viewed these twisted things were, dare I say, kind of genius. So what do we do with that? Well, I think we can definitely look at changing the name. It doesn't need to be called Schenkerian analysis. His contribution was large in the topic of prolongation and structural levels, but it's not the only one. Here, if we this is the article Structural Levels in Carnatic Music by Schachter. This is South Indian music. The guy's from Boston, Caucasian male, and look what he's doing here, trying to put these Indian practices and musical things into a foreground, middle ground, and background. And that's the topic. Are we supposed to do that? Do these people that play the music and are really the founders of that uh, genre, do they view it in a sense of foreground, middle ground, background? Well, according to Schachter, they do, in a sense, not aligning with someone like Schenker, but they do have this sense of spiritual hierarchy. And I find that interesting. It's almost a uniting thing that can be found in different cultures, is a sense of being less than a creator. And it can be easily tainted. Certain theologians say that when a great thing is created um, and used in absolutes, that is the breeding ground for evil and destruction. Absolutism, you know, humans aren't going to get it right. We're not going to be able to understand everything. And trying to, say, okay, it's done. I figured it out, as Schenker did and kind of tried to put his stamp on the world. He got it wrong. And, a lot of people are not happy about that, including myself, that we have to, you know, look to a person that wasn't, in today's standards, maybe even then, a good person. But moving forward, what do we do with all of these things, all these tools created through evil? Do we throw them out? Do we change them? Do we pretend that it didn't happen, no matter how, you know, devastating it was in the past? Well, I don't know. I don't know if it's important to say yes, we should, or no, we shouldn't at this point, because this year has been an awakening, in a sense, for many of us about all these things that were even going on. So I think it's important to keep discussing, keep talking about, and I don't think we need to come to a conclusion just now. I think that's where I'll leave it. Thanks.